join so that we don't have one of those. It's only happened once that we forgot to push the resume recording button, but make sure it happens today. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get us into our slides. I'll probably go through things once or twice while we just wait for some people to join. And again, that will start in 1 minute.
इतनी ज्यादा सोनी तुझ में दिखे चांद का फ्लेवर चम 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 अप टू डेट है तेरे जेवर
हम मुझे चेस करे तू लव द मैटर रेस करे तू
डोंट थिंक टू मच सोनी ये मेरी संग कमर हिला
तू गोगल पाके नची तो मुंडा कहंदा अखियां मिला
तू गोगल पाके नची तू मुंडा कहंदा अखियां मिला
तू गोगल पाके नची तो मुंडा कहंदा
अखियां मिला
你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？我的情也真，我的爱也真，月亮代表我的心。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？
Cosechando mis mares, sembrando mis tierras, quiero más a mi patria. Mi nación que luchando rompió las cadenas de la esclavitud. Es la tierra del Inca que el sol ilumina porque Dios lo manda. Y es que Dios a la gloria le cambió de nombre y le puso Perú. Atesoran sus playas la riqueza pesquera de mi mar soberano. Y en la Sierra Maravilla la nieve perpetua es bandera de paz. La montaña en sus venas guardaba el petróleo de nuestro mañana. Y la tierra serrana.
Все пробачати. Мені треба відчувати. Мені треба все пробачати. Мені треба крихту тебе, краплю тебе, твого серця й тої вроди, океана воду. Мені треба лише трохи пригадати легкий дотик і марю на мову вісні. Де ти, моя люба?
You got me in another dimension. You got me in another dimension.
Break it down, man, bring it up slow. You a bad chicken, do you already know? Back to back, baby, you kill the show. Worldwide, Miss International. Switch it up on them, hitting on the low. Nobody messing with the flow. No stopping, and you know she got a own. Worldwide, Miss International. Can you control me, control me? Oh, when you control, na na na. When you control me.
Worldwide Miss International.
Dimension, you got me in another dimension. Why lie? Another dimension, you got me in another dimension.
ओ नैना तेरे
情，叫我思念到如今。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？你去想一想，你去看一看，月亮代表我的心。
Meni treba відчувати. Мені треба запробачати. Треба, все віком треба, серцема закон треба, Topsi mai bun sau rău primim, mulțumim la cer, dar cei mai buni de mai departe. Trebuie, să iubim cum trebuie, să iertăm așa cum trebuie, Tot cei mai buni sau rău primim, mulțumim la cer, dar cei mai buni de
raza peruana, con la sangre y el alma, todos los colores de mi pabellón. Yo también me llamo Perú, con P de patria, la E del ejemplo, la R del rifle, la U de la unión. Yo me llamo Perú, pues mi raza peruana, con la sangre y el alma, pinto los colores de mi pabellón.
Good morning and welcome to the YMCA of Delaware's community conversation titled Welcoming Week. My name is Carol Ann Cross and I'm the Senior Executive Director here at the Brandywine YMCA, and I also serve on our Y's Diversity and Equity team. I use she, her pronouns and have the great pleasure to welcome you all here this morning. Whether you're here locally or elsewhere in the country, we welcome you. Just a quick note, we are going to be recording this discussion today also. Today we're celebrating Welcoming Week. Welcoming Week is an annual campaign that provides the opportunity for neighbours, both immigrants and US-born residents, to get to know one another and celebrate what unites us as a community. Hundreds of Ys and local organisations across the country host events to help bring their communities closer together. I'm also going to give a special little plug here to our board chair here at the Brandywine YMCA, who actually just a few weeks ago became a US citizen himself, Nigel Pond, and I think he is on the call with us today. Did you know that the YMCA has a rich history in welcoming immigrants? The Y has a long history of helping immigrants integrate into their new neighbourhoods and preparing and receiving communities to be inclusive. In 1856, the YMCA was the first organization in the US to offer English as a second language class to immigrants. In the late 1800s, YMCA immigration secretaries created hundreds of thousands of new arrivals at Ellis Island in New York and Angel Island in San Francisco, helping them locate family members, housing and employment. And in the early 1900s, the YMCA of Greater New York introduced adult night classes to immigrants. I would like to acknowledge the land that we're on here today. We are all situated on sacred land. Today, I join you from the unceded lands of the Lenni Lenape people and acknowledge their care of these lands over time. At the Y, we aim to create a space to learn with passion, to listen with intent, and to understand the depth and wisdom within our communities across the state of Delaware. This community conversation celebrates the diversity and richness of what unites us as people. Today is also the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. Today, September 15th through October 15th, is celebrated nationwide as National Hispanic Heritage Month. It traditionally honors the cultures and contributions of both Hispanic and Latino Americans as we celebrate heritage rooted in all Latin American countries. I would now like to share with you a short video that helps amplify the role that we play as people in helping to create a welcoming and warm environment across our communities here.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. If you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Yeah, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
I'd now like to take a moment to introduce and welcome our panelists that you see on screen here today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our panelists today who are dedicated partners to the work of the YMCA and their local communities across the state. We will welcome all panelists to the screen after I introduce each one of them. First, we have Francisco Zambrano, who's the Director of Family Support Services with the Latin American Community Center. Chin Zhao, Immigration Attorney with Chia Law Offices. Sudha Jose, who is the owner of Maud Indian Restaurant. Hannah Kamani, who is the Membership Team Lead at the Bear Glasgow Y. And then Vlad Serbov, who is the Community Relations Manager at the Jewish Family Services of Delaware. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. All right, I think we got everyone. Yay, we're all here. All right, so we're going to take a moment here for all of our panelists just to introduce themselves and just share their story of how they have come to be in America. So we'll start off with Vlad.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vlad. I was born and raised in Moldova. I've been coming to US as a student, as an exchange student since I was 18 years old, but I moved here 3 years ago, right before the pandemic. It was unplanned, let's put it this way, migration. I had to flee my country, so I just only had a few hours to pack my bags and leave. And when I arrived, I had to apply for asylum. And I was granted asylum successfully. So yeah, it's been 3 years. I'm going on the 4th one.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today, Vlad. Hannah.
Good morning. My name is Hannah Kamani. I'm a new team member at the Y. I'm membership team lead at the Bear Glasgow branch. I'm also part of the Diversity and Equity Committee. I'm born and raised in Kenya. I moved here when I was 8 years old. So I'm a proud Kenyan and I'm a proud Delawarean also. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then let's have Francisco.
Buenos días con todo. Good morning to everyone. My name is Francisco Zambrano. I was born and raised in Lima, Peru. I'm married with Marisol. She's from Venezuela, and we have a lovely 8-year-old daughter named Isabella. Well, I would like to say that the Y for me is my community. My family joined the Y when I was 6 years old, and that changed my life. Since then, it turned to be my second family. At the Y, I met my wife, my best friends, and also the Y gave me the opportunity to develop my career. I started as a camp counselor. I did a training internship in New York for the ICCP, for the International YMCA. Then camp director, executive director, and the COO in Peru. And after 23 years, I got my green card and I moved to the US. And I was working for the Greater Branding YMCA. Then COVID hit. And that was also my first experience, unemployed. But I mean, the life gave me now the opportunity to join the Latin American Community Center as their Family Support Service Director, to serve the Hispanic Latino community living in Newcastle County. But also, on the other hand, I'm very happy to support the YMCA of Delaware as a volunteer in their Diversity and Equity Committee and be the liaison with the Hispanic community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Francisco. And then let's have Chin.
Hey everyone, my name is Qian. I originally came from China. I was born in a city named Kaifeng. Which is located in central China. If you go back about 1,000 years in history, that city was the capital of China, largest and busiest city back then, and now it's a very lovely small city in central China. I came to US first in 2009 to continue my education in law. I have my bachelor's degree in law in China and came here to pursue my master's degree here in 2010. I graduated with my master's degree and started working in the immigration field. Emory University is where I got my degree, and that's the guy who's now my husband. After his graduation from his PhD program, we moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, spent a few years there. I got past the bar there. I had my first kid there. Then we moved back to Atlanta, Georgia. And then finally in 2018, we settled down in Delaware. Everyone in my family loves this state. We have short and very much more pleasant summer compared to Atlanta. We get to enjoy snow every winter, but not as crazy as Michigan. We are very close to the beach, but we barely have like severe natural disasters. So hopefully my husband don't have to change his job again, so we get to spend the rest of our lives here. I work as an immigration attorney. Because of my job, I get to work with immigrants, so I know a lot stories of them. I want to thank YMCA for having this discussion, and I appreciate everyone here to listen to the stories, because life is definitely harder for the immigrants. I know that because I've seen so many of them. I mostly work with employment-based immigrants. They come here to accept employment, or they immigrate here based on their abilities or expertise in a certain field. So I'd say the employment is not just a job for them, because before becoming a permanent resident, he or she has to maintain a legal status, which is based on their job. So losing a job for an immigrant is not just a loss in income. They could lose their legal status, which is the authorization for staying in US. And for some foreign nationals, for example, China, India, or Mexico, they have a much longer journey before becoming a permanent resident. That means for longer, I mean maybe 5 years or even 10 years or even longer. And during all those years, if they lose their job, they have to depart this country because they don't have a valid status anymore. And you can imagine after living in US for maybe 5 or 7 or 8 years, they've bought a house here, they've built their family here, their kids have been going to a school in US, and have all their friends in US, they have to wrap it up and leave the country. So that's why I truly appreciate this opportunity to share, and many thanks to everyone here just to listen. Thank you. Back to Caroline.
Thank you very much, Jin. And I can attest to that. I had some friends back in Seattle and the same thing happened. Their visas had expired and they never got renewed, and they were working in very successful jobs, and they had to pack up and go back to India. So, you know, that's a really tough part of what you do. So thank you for sharing that perspective. And I look forward to hearing more as we navigate through our chat today. And lastly, we have Sudha. Could you give us your introduction, please?
Thank you, Caroline. Hi, everyone. My name is Sudha Joshi. I'm the owner of a Modern India restaurant. I born, brought up in India, a very small city, Bhilai. It's a central India. And I came in this country in 2000. I started my career as a IT background. I had the IT background. I was working as in a IT background, and then in 2018 I started a restaurant, Indian restaurant. Long story short, I promised to my grandfather to open a restaurant, and finally I did it in 2018. So that's what I am doing right now. And I live in Chatsford with my husband and 3 beautiful sons. And the favorite is 4 years old Labradoodle. So that's me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sudha. I can attest that her restaurant is phenomenal. So if you haven't been to Maud up in Glen Mills, I got a taster last year for the first time, and I've been back there several times. So thank you for sharing that there, Sudha.
Thanks.
All right, so we'll move on here. So the next question is, what is it that you wish, you know, for the people that are listening to us today here in our conversation, and again, this is recorded, so hopefully other people will join in at another point. What do you want people to know about people in the community? What do you want people in the community to know about your culture or heritage, or maybe some stereotypes, or just some information that you would like to lift up about where you have come from? Hannah, if I could have you share with us first.
Yeah, sure. Definitely from my perspective. So where I'm from is Kenya, which is in East Africa. And I wish people knew that Africa is a really big place and we're not all from the same place. You could fit like 3 or 4 Americas in Africa, just like for geographical context. So, you know, sometimes I tell people I'm African and they're like, oh, I know somebody from Jamaica. And it's like, no, that's 2 very different places. So I wish people knew that it's a huge place with a lot of different, you know, subcultures within it, so many languages, so many different foods, so many different climates. Like where I'm from, we are right on the coastline, and then we're also right next to the mountains. So it's like a little bit of everything. So I'd love for people to take the time to learn a little bit more about Africa, because, you know, the media doesn't really do us a lot of justice. So, you know, when somebody tells you they're from Africa, like to take the time to be like, oh, where in Africa, because it could mean a lot of different things.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that perspective. And what about you, Vlad?
I agree with Hannah that, you know, I wish people would take more time to read about not just what the media is trying to tell you about the country, because Moldova sounds mostly as a, you know, the poorest country of East of Europe in general. But in all honesty, like all the countries, they have the you know, the poor sides or the best sides. So, and I think the Moldova is an interesting place because 2 worlds, 2 you know, civilizations in many ways are colliding. On one you have the Latin civilization, because the Moldovans do speak Romanian, but at the same time everybody else understands the Slavic culture and the Slavic, you know, language, and so the Russian, the Ukrainian would be very familiar, and that brings an interesting mix, you know, in the people. There are different temperaments and even cuisine. You talk about the music. It's a very interesting blend. I would, you know, again, to be open and transparent, I would say it's definitely a place that must be on your bucket list to visit. Maybe take, you know, some time. Do not visit now, because considering the geopolitical, you know, situation that it is. But the people are lovely. People are warm. We have fantastic wine. We've got good food, and, you know, lots of beautiful fields and vineyards that you can always take your time to walk through and find just, you know, interesting, cozy places to stay and enjoy.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And Chin, what about you?
Thanks, Carolyn. I have so much to share about Chinese culture, but I'll first come to the Chinese as language. I put it first, not only because it is a language is a key aspect of a culture, but also because I believe that the language barrier for Chinese immigrants are much bigger than the others. Well, the other panelists may not agree with me, but that's what I believe. I say that because Chinese is the only hieroglyph still in use in the whole world. There were several kinds of hieroglyphs in the history, but Chinese is the only one that survived till date, still actively in use. And being a hieroglyph means we don't have an alphabet.
Right.
I have some demonstration to do. I'll take my first name as an example. So, I hope everyone can see this. Oh, not really.
I think if you sit back a little bit.
That back. Oh, where is?
There,
my face is covered.
There you go. Now we can see it.
All right. So on the top, it's the English spelling of my first name, Qian. I know you really want to add an U between Q and I, but sorry, there is a U there. It's Qian. And right below it is how my first name is in Chinese. There's no A, B, C, D or alpha, beta, no alphabet at all. All right, so I list a few other Chinese characters. I don't think you can see them very clearly.
If you sit right back, just go back. If you stay there, we can stop.
All right.
We can see you. Go, don't move.
Character also read Qian, the first tone, which means humble. And right next to it is Qian, the second tone, also spelled as Qian, but it means money. And the following one, the second tone, Qian, it means front. And that's Qian, third tone, which means shallow as in a shallow water, or light as in a light color. Right next to is Qian, the fourth tone, also spelled as Qian, but it means owe, as in I owe you something. And the last one is also fourth tone, Qian, but it means an apology. So all of these characters can be spelled as Qian, but they actually mean totally different meanings. That's how different Chinese is from English. And that's just characters, and the grammars and the logic behind the language is also very different. So for newcomers, it's hard for them to adapt. It takes longer for them because it takes time for them to understand people around them and know how to actually express them. And the second thing, when it comes to China, people always talk about food. Well, I mentioned the variety of Chinese food because China is a very big country geographically, right? So it covers mountains, seaside, central area, while the food in every area is different. Please excuse my dog. He barks up at the cul-de-sac. That I still remember that 8 years ago when I was still pregnant with my first kid, I once cried over a picture of a bowl of noodles because that style of noodles is only available in my hometown province and not in any other place in China. And I haven't had them for like years. I know that the hormone is like magnifier, it exaggerate every emotion that I had back then, but I miss that noodles so much, and my heart just built up throughout the years, and I cried so hard over it. And I don't know if you've noticed that the Chinese entrees are almost always fully cooked, which is quite different from American food. Have cold dishes, but they are usually served as appetizers. Our entrees are always cooked. And that reminds me of my very first lunch at my orientation at Emory University. I only arrived US for like a couple days. McDonald's and other fast food for meals. And I first had this, they served like sandwiches, rolls, and salads as our lunch at the orientation. As you see that they are all cold. And I picked a roll and I took literally 2 bites and I finished that bag of chips. That's all I had for that lunch. So for the newcomers, I'd say they are not ready for the languages. Their stomach are not ready for the food. And the time difference between China and the US is 12 hours. So the day and night is totally upside down. So 9 a.m. here is like 9 p.m. in China. And the international flight is about 14 hours. And that doesn't count the domestic flights before and after the international one. So you could imagine for a new immigrant from China, after they fly more than 14 hours, they landed in a country where everyone speaks a language that they are not very good at. And they have to start trying the food they're not ready for. It is a big shock. So people to know that if you see a new neighbor of yours who's from China that don't talk very much, don't show up a lot in a neighborhood, or seem to be always keep to themselves, it may be just because they are still in this great shock after coming to this country. So after living in here for 13 years, now I can enjoy all kinds of sandwiches. I can finish a whole bowl of salad. I'm ready for all this food. So it takes time for them to adapt. That's what I want to share.
I have much respect for what you say. I had the pleasure of going to Shanghai back in 2018, and it was my first time ever being in China. And it was a big change for me because, like you say, you know, for people that come here, there's in some instances for immigrants, it's a little bit easier. You know, I was born and raised in Scotland. I didn't really have an issue when I moved to the States. I was just learning a new way of living life. But to come from China and having had that experience of visiting there, I can see why there'll be more challenges for our Chinese immigrants that are moving here. So thank you for sharing. Sudha, what about you?
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, so I always, we have so many things which I want to share, but the one very important thing which I always wanted to share, and I have a great platform today to share. A lot of people get offended when they see swastik in Indian's house. They put the swastik on their door, and I just want to tell everyone, it's not that they are supporting to the Hitler or anything. It's a very different sign. It's a very similar sign what the swastik we use and Hitler sign swastik. It is very similar but not same. What we use, it's a religiously, it's a blessing to give the blessing to the people who lives in the house, and the people who are visiting to the house. That is the blessing. It's not a different meaning. So that's always, I know, I was so hesitant when I came here. I was so hesitant to use that symbol, but then I felt I should let them know, everyone let them know what is the meaning for that. It's not we are supporting the Hitler or it's a Hitler sign. No, it is not. It's a totally different swastik, different direction. It looks similar, but it is very totally different. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudha. Yes, it's very interesting how something in one culture has a completely different meaning and representation in
Very
another
true.
culture. And so thank you for providing that insight. And then Francisco.
Thank you. I would like to say, to start with, saying that not all people that speak Spanish are from Mexico. From Mexico to Chile, there are 18 countries that have Spanish as their native language. With Hispanic, Latino people are friendly, sociable in all aspects, very cooperative, and I will say very creative. And probably this is because all of the socio-economical challenges that had happened in our countries, have made us always think out of the box all the time. Some facts about Peru. Peru is home of one of the new 7 wonders of the world, Machu Picchu, which was the sacred site of the Incas Empire. There are 43 native languages spoken in Peru. The top 2 are Quechua and Aymara, both are from the Andes. Also, the Lake Titicaca is the highest navigable lake in the world, is close to 12,000 feet. The Amazon River begins in Peru. There are more than 4,000 varieties of potatoes in our country. Ceviche is Peru's national dish. And Peru is the culinary heart and soul of South America. And our cuisine probably is top 5, if not top 3 in the world. So that's some of the facts that I wanted to share with all of you.
Well, thank you for sharing. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. Soccer or football?
Football with you. Yes, that's the national sport. I mean, the most popular sport in Peru.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. You're on our team. All right. So our next question is to share an experience or situation when during your time of being here, you maybe didn't feel welcome or your family didn't feel welcome. If you'd be willing to share that. So I'll go to Sudha, if I could ask you first, please.
I'm here from 2000 and fortunately always I felt very welcomed. Everyone welcomed me with open-handed, open-armed arms. And unfortunately in last few years, I had a couple of incidents which I would like to share. I have the restaurant in my old restaurant. One incident I want to share that old restaurant, Rasa Indian Cuisine. We had the Ganesha idols and the entrance. And most of the people, they were so, they liked it. They were asking about what is the Ganesha idol. And that's, but one time one customer came and he refused to come inside because they said, it is a religion thing and the restaurant should not be religious thing. So I said, no, I'm just representing Indian restaurant and that is the Ganesha. We always put that ideal. It's not like that. But he refused to come and they asked me to remove that idol and I refused that one. So that happened. That was shocked me because most of the people never had any problem, never think, but that's only the incidents I had in my restaurant. One time I was taking the right turn and I had the right of the way to go and someone took the U-turn and they were coming in front of me and when I honked them to let them know that I'm there and then that person told me, go back to your home. What are you doing here? So those incidents happen. Sadly, it's happened. But yeah, in last few years, I faced those things.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you had to have that experience, but I'm sure that that's not one of the only experiences that we're going to hear from the rest of the panel. And we know that we have plenty of other brothers and sisters and immigrants across the country that I'm sure have had similar experiences and if not worse in situations that we're all accustomed to hearing now in this day and age. If I can go to Shin next.
Thanks for asking, Carolyn. I personally don't have any experience just because I am an immigrant. Actually, I have some good things that makes me to share, that makes me feel welcome. When I first moved to Delaware, I was very happily surprised that the public schools offer Chinese language immersion program in Delaware. I've never seen it offered in any other state in US, or as far as I know. Because I've seen in a lot of incidents or over the news that immigrants are targeted. The logic behind it is, you come to this country, you got to learn our language because you want to be here. You have to be fluent in English and everything, adapt to the lifestyle here. This is the first time that I see that people are really interested and want to know about China, about Chinese. And a few years back, it was before the pandemic, I think it's 2018, when I visited the Disney World in Orlando. I saw this short video about China. It's not how China looks right now. It was how China looks back in 1980s. So I feel welcomed and included in this country when when the native people show their interests about my culture, my history, and my language. I just saw a question about how do people even learn Chinese if there's isn't an alphabet. Well, I'll just quickly answer that question. We just use our memory. That's our strongest weapon against impossible language. So we remember how it looks, like you remember how to draw a picture. But in recent years, there's a spelling system invented to help kids remember and to learn this language, so it's much easier. I don't know how our ancestors even learned this language, so we're lucky that we have a spelling system now. The second thing that makes me feel welcome is the welcoming week hosted by YMCA. When Peijin on the white team first approached me about inviting the dragon dancers and the lion dancers to celebrate the welcome week, I felt so good that we have these beautiful dance that we want to show people. It is a great Chinese tradition. It brings good wishes, and it is very fun to watch. So all of this make me feel welcome here. But like I said, you can see from over the news that there's incidents here and there. They say, just like Suda just mentioned, if you are not good at the language or the lifestyle here, you should just go back to your country. But what I want to say is, US is our country. We love this country. We live here, but we still get to keep our tradition. We still are very happy to share it with everyone else. We take American cultures into our life. We also want to share part of our culture with the local people. That makes us feel more than just a guest. We can feel more rooted in this country, not just like a guest, like I said. That's all I want to share. Thanks.
Thank you for your perspective there, Shin. Vlad, what about you?
Hi, Shin, I just want to ask, what's the name of your cat? Because we're able to see it.
This one is Butter.
Butter.
His brother Toast is upstairs.
I was going to say, is it called bread?
Yeah, they are like butter and toast because they are sticking it to each other. Toast is mostly staying upstairs because our dog is the master of downstairs.
There you go.
Outrun the dog.
So one thing that I really love about America is the fact that, you know, when you come here, you visit or you live here, you have a chance to interact with different cultures. And like one of the beauties, for example, if I want to get the taste of India, I can always come to Sudha's restaurant, right? And try it authentic, something decent. Not many places, let's put it that way. When I lived in Moldova, all I could count was our national food, maybe a little bit of Ukrainian, maybe a little bit Russian or Romanian. And that's about it, variety. So here, I'm definitely take advantage of trying, you know, Mexican food, Asian food, you name it, like everything. I'm Jamaican, wonderful. And so far, the experience was wonderful. But speaking about the discrimination and the question that you asked, Carolyn, I have not experienced in US while living here, you know, pretty much, I mean, visiting and living, not nothing of that extraordinary, except when the political situation, we all remember in January when we had the riots and the, you know, the White House was under siege. That's when it was about the time when I had to renew my driver license, and I went to the DMV to do that. And I'm back at that. I was living in Philadelphia, so I did it at the northeast part of Philly, which mainly is populated by the Eastern Europeans. So I go to the DMV, ask the questions about like the real ID, because I wasn't sure which one should I get, just a regular or a real ID. And the person that it was providing the answers became impatient and started making comments, you know, all these immigrants, you know, with a condescending tone, implying that we are, you know, somehow slowly thinking and we're not, you know, getting the information that we're supposed to get. Mm-hmm. I was really surprised because I was caught off guard. It never happened to me in US that bluntly and directly to be attacked or commented. And so I listened to the person, and then I stood up and they were trying to tell me, okay, now go, you know, take a picture next. And I stopped the whole line, stopped the whole process. And I said, I'm not moving anywhere until I'm going to talk to the supervisor. Everybody was, you know, silent, shocked. And, you know, they were still trying to push me to go further. And I said, no. I'm not letting you go. You know, I want to talk to a supervisor. So I went to the supervisor, I talked, and I made sure that I submitted a formal complaint in writing because this was absolutely unacceptable. And I wanted to outline that I understand that I wasn't the first nor the last probably person, because majority of those immigrants that were coming to get their driver license, mainly CDL classes, they were afraid because they don't speak the language so you know, live freely, I guess, and that's why they would never object or they would never protest. But I felt it was a duty to do that. And when you see someone who's discriminating, it's important not to be just a you know, standing there and just observe it, but to take an action and say something, do something about it. But I guess, again, it's what I'm seeing is this, unfortunately, the level of intolerance and discrimination kind of increases as the time goes by. And I think it's partially it's the politicians are, you know, at fault at that, because it's not happening only in the US, that's happening in Europe, that's happening everywhere. People are, you know, they try to find different excuses to discriminate one another based on the color of the skin, accent of the language, or, you know, nationality, whether you're Jew, whether you're Russian, Ukrainian, anything, just to kind of set them apart. And it's always interesting that they are trying to brag about their, let's put it the way, nationality or race. But in the end of the day, that person didn't do anything to deserve it. You know, it's not like he, you know, was good at school and that's why he was born, you know, white or black. No, it's just something that is given to you by the nature. And still people manage to find it as an excuse to start these wars and you know, and subsequently to do the discrimination, which is hideous in many ways.
Well, and thank you for stepping up and standing up for yourself and for other folks who are in similar predicaments. I think it's so easy, especially in that situation, to just retreat and say, well, I guess I'll just walk away and maybe I'll come back another day and try again. So, you know, kudos to you for your strength to do that and to have that conversation. You know, I even just thought about when I moved to the state of Delaware. So I'm now actually a year here working for the YMCA in Delaware. Moved from Seattle, and when we came here, we went to the DMV to go get our licenses and all that changed over. Well, going to the DMV here was quite an experience because one, it was in COVID time, and so everyone was wearing masks, and you had the plastic screens, and it was near enough impossible to be able to be heard between myself and the person sitting on the other side, and then with all of the other noise going around. And I actually remember saying to my wife at that point, I said, if I was someone that came in here with English was not my first language, or I had some type of disability that prevented me to be able to speak to someone because of the barrier and just all of the other obstacles, it was really such an unfortunate experience to have. And so then to couple that with the experience that you had when that wasn't even during COVID times, right? That was before COVID hit. So, you know, I think it's just when you go into different environments, how do we show up and how do we stand up for what is right? So again, kudos to you, Vlad, for that. So thank you for sharing. Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely think I feel welcomed in a different way because a lot of times people don't know I'm an immigrant. So I definitely think I get to feel unwelcome from like an outsider's perspective, even though I am an immigrant, because I've had multiple times where people have made comments about immigrants and I'm like, oh, I'm one of them. I'm one of them. Like one situation that comes to mind is I was at work once and we had hired a couple people who were like non-native speakers. And so, you know, they had an accent, they spoke Spanish, and, you know, I was excited to have them on the team. And I was like, we were closing up the store and it was just me and a coworker. And he was like, oh my God, you know, all these immigrants, they just keep taking our jobs. And it's one of those moments where, like Vlad said, like you can either, you know, speak up or stand down, because I could easily be like, yeah, they suck, and just like, you know, keep my safety and keep my own priorities, because he was none the wiser. And I was like, you know, like, what makes you say that? And he's like, oh, you know, they just come to our country and they take our jobs. I was like, well, you know, I'm an immigrant. And he kind of just looks at me like, you know, oh, and he's like, oh, you know, you don't count. I'm like, I do. And I was like, I had to come here. I had to, you know, go through the whole process. And I was like, you know, I told him, I was like, you should kind of think about like why you say things like that and what you think of when you think of an immigrant. And I'm like, they got the same job you did, the same way I did, which was all the right way, you know, so it's not just about, you know, these immigrants and what they do. So there's been a lot of moments like that where I felt unwelcomed, and also for my family, because like my mom has a Kenyan accent and a lot of my extended family have accents. And I've definitely seen, you know, if we go to public space, people may be a little bit short with them or not super welcoming because of the language barrier. And then if I speak up, they're like, oh, you know, she's just like one of us. But it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm still, you know, still an immigrant nonetheless. And, you know, I really prioritize like when somebody does have an accent or, you know, doesn't speak English as their first language, to be like patient with them, because that just means that they speak another language, which I think is a cool thing. And it's a great way to like, you know, welcome somebody, be like, oh, what language do you speak? So definitely I've found that people have that kind of disparity because of my accent.
Well, and I think to that point, Hannah, you know, I think of when someone says to me, oh, where are you from? You know, and I say, oh, I'm from Delaware.
Yeah.
And then it's, well, where are you really from? And, you know, that isn't for that person to ask me that. That's for me if I want to give that up. And again, it depends on the environment and the situation and how that question is being asked. But
yeah,
it just
I mean, I've definitely had it with like, let's say if I'm wearing like traditional African clothing, where somebody will be like, where are you from? And then I'm like, oh, I'm from Delaware. And they're like, this is, you can see on their faces, they're like, what? It doesn't make sense. And I'm like, but I'm originally from Kenya, you know, but it's true. It really depends on the setting, because sometimes people don't always ask that question with like the friendliest intention.
Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then Francisco.
Yeah, those assumptions, I mean, happens to me as well. When they ask me, where are you from? Peru. A big guy, 5'9", you know, I mean, it's not what they have as a Peruvian stereotype. But anyhow, on a no welcoming experience, yes, I have one. When I came here to America, I was 14 or 15 years old. I came through the Miami airport and I was with the immigration officer. And he asked me, when was the last time you were here? Well, I was here like a year and a half ago. I came here to visit, my family here. Oh, how can I know about that? Well, you have my stamps in my passport. Don't you know that in your country you can get fake stamps? Well, I was like, okay, but I mean, how do you want me to show you that that was the time frame that I was in America? And don't put me in the same bucket. I mean, you can assume that all Peruvians do that. And then he just did this, like he raised his hand, and I was sent to that lovely small room behind the immigration booths. And I spent like 30 minutes. I mean, they started to ask me different questions about why I was coming here to America. And then the last question was like, okay, what would you do if I put in a plane back to Peru? Well, I'm gonna have to call my grandpa and tell him that, I mean, I'm gonna break his heart because, I mean, you're sending back to Peru. I have no choice. And then he told me, okay, just go. And then I was literally running like Home Alone movie through the Miami airport to catch my plane to California. And that was something that, I mean, I didn't like. That's why now I avoid going through Miami. But I mean, that was a bad experience here. But on the other side of the story, I mean, when I was working with the community in Canada and Westchester, I mean, I was very welcome. I mean, people there helped me a lot to, I was a new guy coming from South America to the East Coast, to Pennsylvania, right? To start my networking in order to serve the community, especially, I mean, a lot of support from Hispanic, community in Kennett Square, Westchester. That was really, I mean, welcome. They introduced to many people. They helped me a lot. And now that I'm in Delaware as well, I mean, going through all those experiences, like having migrate from Peru, right, with a family, starting a new job, having worked in warehouses and other businesses, struggling with paying bills. I mean, all that experience helped me now to give back to the community and also mentor and guide those immigrants in this area, especially Hispanic ones, right? I mean, that's something that is very meaningful for me. I'm pretty sure that I'm making a positive impact in them and helping them to excel and thrive in this community, in this country, especially. I mean, which is very, very hard when you don't know the language, right? Language barrier is a main issue, and that's something that organizations like the YMCA, the LACC are doing to support the community and make those people feel welcome and in this society. So those are my two stories.
Thank you for sharing your very honest and vulnerable perspective there. That was very kind of you to share that. All right, the last question I have for the panel here is, what can we look at doing as far as actions that we can take as a community to be more welcoming and more inclusive? And I'm going to start with Vlad on that one.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we as a community are facing is the fact that people are scared of unknown. And if they have never interacted with a refugee or an immigrant or somebody who's a foreigner, then they have all these different assumptions that usually they would hear from media, from social media as well, which oftentimes are absolutely incorrect. But one of the things that I always try to do is I'm always open to learn something new about the American culture, but at the same time share about my own culture. And I find that as more as you educate, you can beat the ignorance, you can beat the bigotness. And I think it's one of the best examples is on daily life, the way you live, the way you are interacting with people. You are the best example to kind of demonstrate who you are. And I always, definitely do try to mention during my conversations when we talk about different cultures, races, that America is built out of all the immigrants. So I have the same right and the same, life here, just as the way everybody else does. Just because somebody else came, a couple decades ago, or their grandparents, immigrated. But at the end of the day, we're all, as someone put it out, a professor in my school said, we're all guests in this world, and we have to not forget that, there'll be a time when we have to leave, and make sure that it's all left, in peace and intact. So that's kind of like the motto that I try to live. But I have a huge privilege because, working at the Jewish Family Services, we do serve and we do help the refugees to be resettled in the state of Delaware. And so that's why, being involved with the volunteers, this is the way that I can actually educate, American volunteers, explain to them who are the refugees, what are their needs, what are the cultural differences, and what's the best way we can help them to be integrated. Because I feel like the more the local society is open to accept new refugees, the easier for them is to integrate, and the more they're motivated to learn the new ways in their new life here in US.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I think that continues to be a challenge for us, right? Because when people
Absolutely.
think of refugees, they see people that are taking something from someone that lives in the space that they're coming to. And it's, how do we welcome people? Because we know we have resources, we have community partners, we have, local authorities, so on and so forth, that are able to provide those services to welcome those that are, refugees, asylum seekers, whatever their current situation is. And, I often think about us as people, if we go ahead and I take my face off and I take my skin off and I go down to my core, I have a skeleton, you have a skeleton. And if we all go down to that core, that's who we are. It's all the stuff that just gets added to us over time that helps create the person, from the outset. But inner, we're all the exact same. And I think the more that we can continue to love and just care and be for one another, then that's going to be a more fruitful opportunity as we move forward. I do want to point out to anyone that's listening, if you do have any questions for the panel, we will have questions at the end here. So feel free to use the chat feature and you can go ahead and log those questions in and we'll get to them in due course. Sudha, if I can ask you to share.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, sure, definitely. I just want to request to everyone that show your value system. Be curious, not be judgmental. So whenever my kids go to school, every morning I tell them, be nice, be confident, and be responsible. Those three things. When I came in this country, so many things I was curious. I was trying to understand why we were celebrating Halloween, how I can celebrate Christmas, and we are doing now everything we all are celebrating together. I can give them an example. In our school district, they started Diwali vacation, the Diwali holiday. So this is the first school district who in the Pennsylvania who are started Diwali holiday. So just be curious. Don't hesitate to ask the question why the other people are using this the symbol or any holiday or any costume or whatever they are doing. So just ask question. Be curious. Don't be judgmental, please.
Yep. And I think to that point, being curious, but being curious in an inquisitive way and not in a demeaning or rude way. I think that's the thing that makes people feel like, okay, they really want to hear from me and they want to understand who I am. So,
right.
So thank you for sharing that perspective.
And that's what I said. I always ask to my kids, be nice. That is the first thing. Be nice, always be curious, be responsible, and be confident.
Exactly. Thank you. Francisco.
Thank you. I would say, learn how to understand how to work with people from different colors, right? Understand the dimensions of diversity. That's something that's very important for, everybody working with diversity. Ask questions. Like Sudha was saying, make no assumptions, listen. That happens to me, even though I'm working with people from Latin American, I can make assumptions that what it works in Peru is going to work for people from Central America or from other countries. That's something that you have to be very intentional and thoughtful, right? Do it together opportunities. Right now, for example, the YMCA and the LACC, we're working together in order to provide healthy lifestyle to the Hispanic community. That's something that we all will have to work for that. That's a good opportunity to bring all together. And I will say also participate at all levels. Bring your voice to the table. So that way, you can be listened and you can provide equity to the different, communities in Wilmington or in Delaware. Those are the most important things to have a community to be more welcoming.
Wonderful. Thank you, Francisco. Hannah.
I definitely think like a good way to make things more welcoming is to be patient with people who are, from different countries. Cause I think everybody kind of expressed, moving to America, there's a big culture shock. Things are really different. So, when you interact with someone in your day to day, if they mention that they're from somewhere else, they may not know the things that you assume that they know. So I think it's really good to be patient with them and kind of meet them halfway. Cause I mean, like I've been here for most of my life and I'm still learning things about America. It's like a never ending amount. It took me forever to call football soccer. So, sometimes somebody's talking to you and there's a barrier to just exercise patience and be like, they actually may not even know what I'm talking about because, they're just from a different place. So I think we can always meet each other halfway.
You've gone and called football soccer? Hannah?
And not to you guys, not to you guys. in my heart, when I say it, I lose a little bit of my spirit, but we do what we got to do.
It's like me this morning. I said to my wife here, I said, here's your vitamins. And in America, we say vitamins. And she says to me, she's like, you still say vitamins? I was like, yeah, because it sounds way cooler when I say vitamins versus vitamins. So anyway, and last but not least, Chin, what's your way for us to become welcoming and inclusive? What's your little tidbit?
Well, actually, what I want to say is already said by the other panelists. I guess I'll just sum it up. So just put down the assumption. As Vlad said, to refugees, some people assume they are here to take our spaces, our resources, and for the other like employment-based immigrants that I mostly deal with, people assume that they are here to take the jobs. They're here to steal our technologies, but that's not the case. They come here because they love this place, they admire its system, or just love the lifestyle here. So it's important to put down the assumption to want to truly know them as a person, not as a type of person. And certainly I would appreciate that whoever is interested in our culture to feel free to ask. That your willingness to learn or to know about our culture will make us feel welcomed. And well, at least as the first generation immigrants, we are always happy to share our culture, our stories, because there's so much there to share. And I would totally agree with Hannah about football versus soccer. Because soccer in Chinese, if you take a literal translation, it's 足 means foot and 球 means ball. And that's we've been calling soccer 足球, like foot plus ball. And when we come to US, it's a totally different sport. So I always have to think about it, spend a second on it before I say soccer or when I say football, it's totally confused. All right, that's what I want to say. Just feel free to inquire us about our culture and take us as persons instead of a type, just because we come from a certain country. Thank you.
Thank you, Jin. Thank you, Jin. And then Hannah, you raised your hand there.
Oh yeah, Peja reminded me of something just in this conversation of the difference between American culture. I had a really recent incident with somebody who she'd come to the Y, and I deal with membership, and I found out she's a recent immigrant from Kenya. She had 3 little ones with her, and I was kind of telling her what we do, all that kind of stuff, and she just was like, "What is summer camp?" She's like, "I keep hearing all the kids are talking about it. My kids are like interested," and she's like, "What is that?" And she's like, and she kind of felt shy to ask that, and I was like, it's okay, because like where I'm from, we don't have a summer break it's hot all the time. So we go to the beach all throughout the year. We don't have summer and we have winter break, and we do like holiday camps, but we just don't have summer camp. And I was like, I gave her the full rundown that I was like, this is like integral in American culture. Like kids go to camp, then they're camp counselors, like Francisco was talking about. It's a huge thing. And she just had no idea, she'd heard about it, but no one taking the time to, bring that up. So those little moments where, in your day-to-day, someone we just not know, and it could be like an awesome point of conversation, and hopefully her kids come to camp next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We are actually running pretty close to time, and I know we're going to have a bunch of questions because I've been seeing them coming in here, and I would like to take time for the panelists to be able to answer. So we're actually going to skip the next two pieces, which was going to be an interactive Q&A session for you to go in through your mobile device. So we're going to go straight to the questions back to the panel. And so I have one question. I have a question. I would like to hear everyone's perspective on how to overcome professional networking struggles. I'm a medical graduate, and I find it especially difficult for professions or career paths that have licenses like law or medicine to be able to integrate into the system. So I'll ask quickly for an initial perspective from Chin, given that you're in the law field, if you would be able to answer to that. And if anyone else would like to provide an answer, if you could just raise your hand and I'll come to you next.
Well, for that, I'll have to say you have to meet the requirement, the threshold set for the career. For law profession, you got to pass the bar, and to sit in the bar exam, you have to graduate from a U.S. law school. I don't know if I get the question.
I think it's, well, they gave the example of being the graduate and they talked about the professional careers, but just overcoming professional networking, right? We all talk about going to networking events, and how do you, coming in as a new person and maybe English isn't your spoken language, how do you integrate into that profession?
Well, yeah, it is very difficult, especially if you are an introvert. I remember I first worked as a legal assistant because I got into a law firm right after my graduation. But I didn't have time to prepare for the bar exam yet. So I worked first as a legal assistant. I take phone calls. I didn't even know how to greet clients over the phone. I don't know what my first sentence should be after I just pick up my phone. So I just have to listen to my colleagues, how they answer the phones. When pick up, they just say, blah, blah, law firm, how can I help you? That's, even that sentence, I have to learn it. Because the English education and you've had is about how to read an article, how to talk professionally, but you never learn how to greet clients over the phone, how to forward it, pass it into your supervisor. I just spend a lot of time listening to how they do. And as to network building, I would say just don't be shy. Mm-hmm. Even till date, my English is not perfect. I still remember there was once I talked to my colleagues, I tried to say the word constitution. It is a big shame for me because I am a law student, but I was under a pressure speaking a second language, and I was shy at the same time. And I said institution. And throughout the whole conversation, every time I would like to mention constitution, I said institution. So none of my colleagues understand what I was talking about. When I look back, like, oh, it was torturing me, but have to let it happen.
Right.
When you speak a second language, just don't be shy. When you don't know how to say a word, you describe it. when I go to doctor's appointment, when they mention a name of a disease or a condition or a symptom, I have no idea what they are talking about. So I just ask them, when you want to say something, when all of a sudden a word you already know of, or it just your mind, you just can't think of it, just describe it. That's all suggestion I can give, being an introvert, second language speaking attorney. So
thank you for your perspective there, Chin. We're going to go, Francisco, you had your hand up. Did you want to add to that?
Yes, I mean, to add what, I mean, Kian was saying, I mean, for networking, something that have worked for me is going to your roots. Like, I started connecting with Hispanic people, Hispanic organizations. They help me to connect with other organizations. Also, do volunteerism. Go to the YMCA and help them. Then you're gonna be able to build those relations, and they're gonna connect with others, and that's how you can, you know, have more networking in this area.
Okay. All right. I'm going to throw out another question here. How would you define the line between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation? Who would like to take that on? If you can raise your hand. I don't want to put someone on the spot there.
I can.
Vlad? All right.
Yeah. I actually read this question, you know, before you asked it, and I was thinking in my mind, like, how do you do that? And this is the way I see it from my end. If a person has some kind of alternative motive, we're talking about whether, you know, he wants to be promoted, like for the job or something, and then he tries to appropriate a different culture because he thinks he will be or she will be accepted in that circle. I think that's an appropriation. That's something that maybe it's forced. Sometimes it's done, you know, intentional or unintentional, but that's more or less. But at the same time, it's so difficult to draw a line because I was thinking about myself, like every single time I'm being forced, whether I lived in back, you know, in Moldova or here, I'm being asked many times by my friends, by sometimes colleagues, like how do I define myself, you know? And I'm like, okay, on one hand I can say I'm Russian because I am part of that Russian culture as well. I am part of the Romanian culture, true, because I went to the school and I know the literature and the history and all that. I'm also, you know, part of the Jewish culture because that's, you know, my heritage. And at the same time, now living in US, I'm hearing my friends saying, oh, you're so Americanized now, the way you talk or the way you like things, even the food taste changes. And, you know, and I finally, you know, because again, as I said, you're kind of being constantly asked, so who you are, pick a side. And I'm like, no. And my answer to them is, listen, I'm hybrid. Nowadays, with all the technology that we live, with all the, you know, globalism that is taking place, I think whether we like it or not, but we are all become the product of being a hybrid. You know, it's a little bit, yes, of their home country, a little bit of the American. And at the same time, look at the world. You know, when I was growing up as a kid, we never celebrated Halloween, right? Or Valentine's Day for that matter. Now, it's impossible to imagine, you know, in Eastern Europe, somebody would not be celebrating these holidays. And so whether it's cultural appropriation, whether it's cultural export, I don't know, like people can define it themselves. But one thing that I know is the world is definitely changing. The computers, the technology gives us a different perspective, and we can be in touch with one another living on different continents and be aware of what's happening in one country versus the other one. So I think that the future of the way we'll go, it will be more of a mix. And even in US, when I, you know, was visiting my family in California, I was noticing that I couldn't find like a standard American. It was mostly mixed with Mexican, you know, culture, especially the food, the music, and that's normal because the country is, you know, neighboring Mexico. Other parts of the country maybe are different. Like if you go look at Miami, it's the Cuban, you know, culture is present there. That's who we are, and you know, whether you should, you know, be against it, I doubt it. I think I'm all about embracing different cultures. And you know, again, I don't like the way people would be using trying to be an American just so you are accepted, or be somebody else just because, you know, of a different race. Or we heard these stories when, you know, some people were trying to portray themselves as Black just because they get a scholarship in college. That's absolutely wrong and unacceptable.
Yep.
But if you're curious about other cultures, and if you like and you want to taste different food, and that becomes part of your daily cuisine, why not go for that? That's kind of my take on it.
Thank you so much, Vlad, for that perspective there. Well, we are really coming up to the end of our time here today, and we have a ton of other questions that we could sit and ask and discuss. But we do have to wrap things up. And so I would like to just take a moment to thank the wonderful panel and our friends here that gave up their time and their commitment to supporting and educating our why across the state of Delaware. We believe that all people, no matter our backgrounds, where we're from and how we got here, we all really deserve to be treated with dignity, compassion, and respect. At the YMCA of Delaware, all are welcome and all belong. Join us for events through the course of this month, as we're going to be celebrating Welcoming Week, which brings together immigrants and neighbours, and it promotes cross-cultural understanding and celebrates what unites us as a community. We also have the 5K International Food Fair and Cultural Performance on September 25th. So if you have some time, go join us at the Western YMCA from 10 till 3 at the end of this month. We certainly hope that you can join us. So from our Y family to yours, welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Все пробачати. Trebu, se iubim cum trebuie. Să iertăm așa cum trebuie. Tot ce mai bun sau rău primim, mulțumim la cer. Dar ce mai bun de mai departe. Trebu, se iubim cum trebuie. Să iertăm așa cum trebuie. Tot ce mai bun sau rău primim, mulțumim la cer. Dar ce mai bun de mai departe.
Завжди поруч, я вітром сонцем за твоїм віконцем. Ти просто знай, що я тебе бачу, і я без тебе плачу. Чи ти мене вже пробачив, бо я тим паче.
Okay, everybody, good job. Great job. I'm going to just stop the recording now.
It logged me out.